I want to know what's going on between us. I don't know what you mean, I said. I want to know where this relationship is going. Sarah, I said, I don't think we have a relationship. I'm renting a room from you. Well, she said, I have feelings for you, and I think you know it, and I think you're taking advantage of me. Then we got into this whole thing about how I was paying only $400 a month and how she, or more accurately her daddy, was saddled with the lion's share of the rent, and how she didn't think this was going to work out. I was exhausted, and I didn't want to talk about it, to be honest. But suddenly the phone rang. I perked up, crossed the room, and grabbed it. I was hoping it was Carolyn, but of course it wasn't. It was somebody trying to sell me insurance. What's the matter? Sarah said with a vicious look in her eye. Your little girlfriend not calling you? Bitch. I guess I... I guess she'd seen me slip Carolyn my number. You're right, I said. This isn't working out. I'll start looking for a new place to live. Try to make it fast, she said. Super bitch. Michael, I had not even known this was going to be such a comedy. The following day, a Tuesday mid-afternoon, I got home to a ringing phone. I didn't hurry. I'd given up hope. Hello? Michael, she said. Is this Michael Bergen? It is, I said. I tried to keep the excitement out of my voice, but I'm not sure I succeeded. This is Carolyn, she said. Carolyn Bassett. We met at Joe's. I remember, I said. I couldn't believe it. She'd waited 5 days. 2 I could understand, but 5? You really like to make a guy wait, don't you? I said. Yeah, she laughed. I figured I'd torture you a little. Well, you succeeded. You forgive me? She asked. I'll think about it, I said. What are you doing tomorrow night? She asked. Just like that. What are you doing tomorrow night? And wouldn't you know it? I was free. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Tia Denise, and today we are going to start The Other Man. This book is about John F. Kennedy Jr., Carolyn Bassett, and me being the Calvin Klein model who he was dating before JFK Jr. and then during their marriage. So let's see what this guy has to say. I'm going to tell you right now, I have not read this book. It is a New York Times bestseller, so I think quite a few people have read this book. I did look over the first chapter, and I'm just going to tell you right now, this isn't going to be a difficult read. Young Calvin Klein model isn't going to make it very difficult for us. He has simple interests, and it's reflected on the page. But I think he's got some stories for us, so let's jump right in. Let's see what Michael Bergen has to say for himself. Okay, chapter 1 is entitled Crazy in Love. In the summer of 1992, at the age of 23, I moved to New York City and went to work as a hotel doorman. This wasn't exactly the culmination of a lifelong dream. I'd gone to Manhattan to become a model, and in fact, I'd been signed 2 years earlier by Click, one of the more reputable agencies. But other than occasional low-paying gigs, I wasn't making much progress, and I was beginning to wonder why I'd ever left Naugatuck, Connecticut. You'd be hard-pressed to find it on a map, but I'd been born and raised there, and my family still calls it home. I missed them, and I missed small-town life. I barely knew a soul in New York. I was renting a room on the Upper East Side from a girl I'd met at the hotel, but that was becoming something of a problem. She was lonely too, and she had managed to convince herself, misguidedly, that I was the answer. New York is very tough on lonely people. When my shift ended at the Paramount Hotel, I'd walk 50 blocks from West 46th Street to the apartment in the East 90s and see all these happy couples on the street, arm in arm or hand in hand, smiling and cooing at each other, and I wondered when it was going to be my turn. I wanted to be happy too. At night, I'd look at all the lit-up windows in the surrounding high-rises, millions of them, and I'd imagine all the happy people sitting down to dinner, watching a romantic movie on TV, then crawling into bed and making love for hours on end. He really was 22 and confused. When you're lonely, you tend to think that you're the last lonely person in the world, and you can't even imagine that there are other people out there, single people, couples, even married people, who are just as lonely as you are. But they're out there, of course. They're everywhere. Some of them even stayed at the Paramount. There were women who would slip me their phone numbers when they tipped me, asking me to please call. They were available. And there were lonely men, too. I remember one guest in particular, a man in his early 40s, a regular. He always buzzed the front desk just as my shift was ending and asked the clerk to please send me up with the afternoon papers. It became something of a running joke at the hotel. "It's Michael's boyfriend again, pining for him." I'd go upstairs, newspapers in hand, and he'd open the door in the buff and ask me to come in. "I can't," I'd say. "I'm sorry." "Oh, please, Michael, just for a minute or two. You're so handsome." "No," I'd repeat. "We're not allowed to fraternize with the guests, even on our own time." And he'd look at me with those big puppy dog eyes like he was about to cry or something and ask if I was sure. "I'll do anything, Michael, anything at all. Just say the word, tell me what you want, spell it out." To be honest, I felt kind of bad for the guy. I could relate to that kind of loneliness. Okay, Michael obviously is a good-looking guy. He is a Calvin Klein model after all. But I gotta tell you, we're on the second page and he's already like, "Everybody wanted me. Men, women, gays, straights, they were all after me." Okay, Michael. And it's all Michael just telling us he's sorry for him just so he can tell the story about how, like, this one guy wanted him so bad. Poor Michael's having to beat everybody off right, left, and center, but he's so lonely. I mean, how lonely can you be when everyone's throwing their numbers at you? But anyway, he says, "I was meeting people here and there. Sure, I couldn't afford to go out. And the problems with my roommate, I'll call her Sarah, were only getting worse. She had taken to wandering around the apartment in nothing but sheer undies. She had a much nicer body than the lonely guy back at the hotel, and I was tempted, but I knew I'd only be asking for trouble. And I couldn't afford trouble. Couldn't afford much of anything, in fact." Michael's painted quite a picture. "I was so lonely wandering the streets, looking into the windows, just wondering, what's it like to be in there? What's it like to have somebody care about you? Meanwhile, I was beating off the public, the women, the men, women, children, gay, straight, everybody was after me. One guy's answering the door, he's got no clothes on, my roommate's walking around in sheer undies. It just sucked to be so lonely." What a bunch of problems for you, Michael. This is a real traumatic setting. I didn't get much modeling work that fall, but I got promoted to bellhop. I wasn't sure how to take this. Did it mean I was finished as a model? That my future was in hotels? One night I was feeling pretty low, so I went out for a beer with a struggling actress who worked the desk at the hotel. She was feeling pretty low herself, and we ended up in bed together. But the relationship didn't last. Oh, darn. They usually don't when they're based on mutual despair, I guess. But it went beyond that. She had a snore like a foghorn. Kept me up all night. I needed my beauty sleep, especially if I had any hope of making it in the modeling business. She wasn't exactly thrilled about getting dumped, and every time I walked past the front desk, she gave me the evil eye. I kept thinking about quitting the job, but I wasn't getting more than an hour's work here and there as a model, and I couldn't leave. Not yet, anyway. So, I scraped by. Day after day, hoping for the big break and hustling off to one cattle call after another with the rest of the wannabe models in New York City. Then it was back to the big glass doors at the Paramount Hotel. One day, en route to yet another casting call, I saw a fellow model on the subway. We both had our portfolios under our arms, clearly going to the same place. We half smiled, shrugged at each other, and got to talking. As it turned out, he was also repped by Click. When the subway reached the station, we walked over to the audition together. Keith, as I'll call him, was making ends meet as a waiter at the Upper East Side bar called Joe's Cafe. His brother, who I'll call Jason, worked there too, tending bar. Keith gave me his phone number and told me to come by the bar for a drink that night. Sounded like a couple of free beers were possible, so I agreed. We reached our cattle call and walked into the lobby. It was full of good-looking men milling around with their portfolios under their arms, smiling to beat the band, trying hard not to look overly desperate. I was as desperate as the next guy, smiling just as hard, but didn't help. I didn't get the job. I went to Joe's Cafe that night. It was small and smoky and pleasant and full of pleasant-looking people. It even had a little dance floor. Several couples were shuffling around, hanging on to each other, looking very much in love. The place felt like the very version of New York that I'd been looking for. Friendly, warm, intimate, full of promise. Keith was happy to see me. He hurried over, shook my hand, and introduced me to Jason. I sat at the bar and had a beer. There were some very attractive women in the place, and Jason went out of his way to introduce me to several of them. I was feeling good, better than I had in weeks. Before long, I had a nice buzz going. Pretty girls were smiling at me, and Jason kept the free beer coming. I thought, here I am, where I belong. I honestly felt as if I'd finally arrived. It might have been the beer, but then again, there was something about all the friendly faces in this tiny little Upper East Side bar that gave me hope. "Do you party?" It was one of the pretty girls I'd been introduced to. "Sure," I said. I thought she was inviting me to dance. I smiled and raised my bottle toasting her. "I party. I love to party. My friends call me Mr. Party." I feel like we're supposed to be on Michael's side because he wrote the book, but I feel like I'm solidly off Michael's side at this point. Could anybody be more annoying than this? I don't know, you guys. This might be a long haul. My friends call me Mr. Party. Okay, she led me off past a small dance floor and down a dark corridor. I found myself in the storage room with Keith and several other patrons. They were hunched over a small mirror doing lines of cocaine. I'd seen enough movies to know what it was, but blow had never found its way to my small town. At least not the small town I knew. I was pretty nervous, to be honest. I mean, a few minutes ago, I'd been sitting at the bar, enjoying my beer buzz and thinking pleasant thoughts about all these pleasant people. And here they were doing drugs. Such nice people, too. Maybe drugs weren't as bad as I'd heard. Boy, they sent this boy to the wrong city. I mean, he's got half a brain. What's going on, Michael? Come on. Michael, have a snort. It was Keith. He was holding the mirror toward me in his left hand. There were 2 squiggly lines of cocaine on the surface, chopped to fine dust, and a rolled-up dollar bill parked next to them. I've never done this before, I said. Everyone turned to look at me, but not in a judgmental way. They were real sweet about it. It was strangely electrifying and fast. I was suddenly grinning like an idiot. How's that feel? One of the girls asked me. Not bad, I said. I couldn't stop grinning. Keith laughed. You got another line coming, he said. I didn't expect this to be a comedy. Okay. I didn't read this book ahead of time, guys. That might have been a mistake. Okay, let's press on to see how it goes with Michael and the cocaine. Okay. Let's get serious. He's doing drugs. It's a serious time. Okay. I leaned over the mirror and repeated the procedure. Whoosh! What a kick. One of the... Okay. It's not that funny. I don't know. You know, sometimes you just start laughing. Okay. One of the girls took a small mirror from her hand and ran her forefinger over the remaining coke. Open your mouth, she said, moving close. Okay. I can do this. It's not that funny. It's just so freaking dumb. What are you doing, Michael, in the storage unit with a bunch of strangers doing coke? Okay, it's not... Okay. I'm here to read to you guys. I'm sorry. Okay. One of the girls took the small mirror from my hand and ran her forefinger over the remaining coke. Open your mouth, she said, moving closer. I opened my mouth. She rubbed her finger along my gums and teeth. Everything went numb and tingly. I liked the feeling. I grinned harder. I felt as if I'd just lost my virginity. I felt great. I felt beyond great. I was flying. I loved my newfound friends. Okay. I decided to go back for more the following night, a Thursday. Sarah got home while I was dressing. Where are you going? She asked. To Joe's, this little club up the street. Can I come? Sure, I said, not wanting to be a prick. Oh, wait. For some reason, my roommate got the wrong idea, like, that I was into her or something. I mean, yeah, I, always said yes to everything that she said because I didn't, want to be a prick. But where'd she get the idea I was into her? I'm going out to a bar and I tell her that she can come with me, but then she, thinks that we're, an item. Crazy Sarah. What's up? She said on the way to the bar. You seem different. Nothing, I said. I'm in a good mood. And I was in a good mood. Suddenly, I liked New York. My agency had called earlier in the day to say it still believed in me, and I was finally beginning to make friends. Friends with recreational drugs. We walked into Joe's, and I introduced Sarah to Keith and Jason and some of the people I'd met the night before. Jason comped us a couple of drinks, and we took a seat at the bar. I turned and noticed 2 women on the dance floor. The one who caught my eye was a tall, willowy blonde. She was dressed in black from head to toe, looking very elegant. She was dancing with her girlfriend, chatting, smiling. I liked the way she moved. I liked the way her long hair sparkled against her black dress. Who's that? Sarah asked. She noticed me staring. I'd completely forgotten that Sarah was sitting next to me. Forgotten everything but the willowy blonde. I don't know, I said. But I knew I wanted to know. And so did every other guy in the place. They couldn't keep their eyes off of her. When the music ended, the blonde approached the bar and said something to Jason that made him laugh. There was an easy familiarity there. I got the impression that they were more than friends. She looked up, saw me staring, smiled. She was even more beautiful up close. I felt a real pull from her. I'd never been too good about approaching women in bars, pretty shy to be honest. But I told myself I wouldn't leave the bar without talking to her. Maybe he should just stand there and she'll come over and hand him her number. Isn't that the way it usually works out for him? I had another beer and Sarah asked me to dance. I begged off. I kept eyeing the blonde. She glanced over at me from time to time. Sarah was beginning to get irritated, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to talk to this girl. I was actually beginning to feel a little desperate. It was getting late, and I didn't want her to slip away. She returned to the bar and again said something to Jason. It was clearer than ever these two had something going on. This only complicated matters, but someone down at the far end of the bar hollered for Jason, and when he moved off, I braced myself and I went over. "Hi," I said, "I'm Michael." I sounded like a dork. "What? Michael? Poor 22-year-old Michael. Do you sound like a dork by being like, hey, I'm Michael? What's dorky about that? No wonder he's never talking to anybody at bars. He says the simplest thing and he's over there condemning himself." "I couldn't help noticing you." "Well, that's dumb. Don't say that." She smiled back. "Carolyn," she said. Suddenly Jason was back and Sarah was calling my name loudly. "Michael!" I looked over at Sarah and waved. "I'll be right there," and then turned back just as Carolyn moved off to join her girlfriend. Shit. That was it? That was the big line? "Couldn't help noticing you." Found a book of matches at the bar, borrowed a pen, and scribbled my name and phone number on the inside flap. Carolyn was standing at the edge of the dance floor with her girlfriend, just then reaching for a cigarette. I hurried over with my book of matches and lit it for her. She leaned close. In the sudden glare, she saw that I'd written my name and number on the flap. She blew out the match. I offered her the booklet, and she took it. "Thanks," she said, and she and her girlfriend moved out into the dance floor. I didn't know how to read that. I walked back to the bar where Sarah was waiting. "Let's go," she said, pissed. I didn't want to go, but it was late, and I didn't think she should walk home alone. I grabbed my jacket and followed her to the door, turning one last time for a look at the blonde. All I could think was, if there's a God, she'll call. Deep literature, this ain't. But she didn't call. Not the next day, or the day after that. I went back to Joe's on Saturday, hoping to run into her. She wasn't there. I paid a visit to the storage room and did a few lines. Maybe she was in the storage room. I was so wired that no one could shut me up. It was quite the transformation. In a few easy snorts, I'd gone from monosyllabic Michael to chatty Kathy. I returned to the bar and I drank and smoked and fidgeted and kept glancing toward the door, hoping Carolyn would appear, thinking perhaps I could will her to appear. Didn't work. I went home feeling lousy. Part of it was Carolyn, of course, but part of it was the coke. Getting high was nice, but crashing was a total drag. I really didn't like the feeling. And I liked it even less the next morning. I couldn't shake the nausea. I didn't like the way I looked either. Black bags under bloodshot eyes. Sunday, I went back to Joe's and prayed, but Carolyn didn't show. I got invited out back for a line, and I tried to find the wherewithal to pass, but I figured a line or two wouldn't hurt. It hurt. Monday, I went to work feeling queasy and weak. The glass door seemed heavier than ever. A couple of my colleagues asked if I was feeling all right. Sure, I told them, but clearly I wasn't. It occurred to me that I didn't have the constitution for drugs, and promised myself I'd never do them again. Then I thought about it and reconsidered. I might dabble now and then, but more carefully. I returned to the apartment that night, looking forward to passing out on my red futon, but Sarah was waiting for me in a skimpy little tank top, and she was in a curious mood. She had that look on her face. "We need to talk." "What's up?" I asked. "I'm glad you asked," she said. "I want to know what's going on between us." "I don't know what you mean," I said. "I want to know where this relationship is going." I was a little taken aback. Relationship? That was a pretty loaded word. She's my roommate, and I'd seen her in her underwear from time to time, and she was certainly easy on the eyes, but that was all there was to it. I never had any interest in getting involved, and I'd always been upfront about that. "Sarah," I said, "I don't think we have a relationship. I'm renting a room from you." "Well," she said, "I have feelings for you, and I think you know it, and I think you're taking advantage of me." Then we got into this whole thing about how I was paying only $400 a month, and how she, or more accurately her daddy, was saddled with the lion's share of the rent, and how she didn't think this was going to work out. I was exhausted, and I didn't want to talk about it, to be honest. But suddenly the phone rang. I perked up, crossed the room, and grabbed it. I was hoping it was Carolyn, but of course it wasn't. It was somebody trying to sell me insurance. What is this detail? I hung up, visibly disappointed. "What's the matter?" Sarah said with a vicious look in her eye. Your little girlfriend not calling you? Bitch. I guess I... I guess she'd seen me slip Carolyn my number. You're right, I said. This isn't working out. I'll start looking for a new place to live. Try to make it fast, she said. Super bitch. Michael, I had not even known this was going to be such a comedy. The following day, a Tuesday mid-afternoon, I got home to a ringing phone. I didn't hurry. I'd given up hope. Hello? Michael, she said. Is this Michael Bergen? It is, I said. I tried to keep the excitement out of my voice, but I'm not sure I succeeded. This is Carolyn, she said. Carolyn Bessette. We met at Joe's. I remember, I said. I couldn't believe it. She'd waited 5 days. 2 I could understand, but 5? You really like to make a guy wait, don't you? I said. Yeah, she laughed. I figured I'd torture you a little. Well, you succeeded. You forgive me? She asked. I'll think about it, I said. What are you doing tomorrow night? She asked. Just like that. What are you doing tomorrow night? And wouldn't you know it? I was free. She lived downtown on 2nd Avenue between 10th and 11th, but she didn't mind the trip to my neck of the woods. I was waiting for her at the corner of 92nd and York when she arrived in a cab. She stepped out and looked even more beautiful than I remember. That lustrous hair, the shockingly blue eyes, those lips. Hey, she said, as if she'd known me for years. She began to walk, and I fell into step with her. Where are we going? I asked. There are lots of little places around here, she said. She walked fast. It was hard to keep up with. She was gliding. We found a little sports bar a couple of blocks away, and she led the way inside a pair of high chairs at a small round table. The waitress brought us a couple of beers and moved off. Carolyn looked at me and smiled. So, she said, who are you? She asked me a lot of questions. Where was I from? What was I doing in New York? How long I had been there? Was I liking it? Who was the girl she'd seen me with at Joe's Cafe? I answered the best I could, but I didn't get much out of her, alas. I tried, but all she shared with me was that she was from Connecticut like me, and she worked as a publicist for Calvin Klein. Every time I pressed her for more details, she turned the conversation around and made it about me. I found it both unnerving and unusual, but not in a bad way. Most people are so hopelessly self-absorbed, they never tire of talking about themselves. Yeah, what a trait, Michael. Not Carolyn. She seemed genuinely interested in me. If I was going to get to know anything about her, it wasn't going to be that night. She was unusual in another way. She was very affectionate on the first date, very touchy-feely. She kept reaching for me across the table, for my hands, my wrists, my arms. She traced the veins on my forearm with the tips of her fingers. At one point, I found her bare foot on my lap. I had no idea how it got there, but I began to massage it. Carolyn, what are you putting your stanky feet up on people's laps for? She looked across at me and smiled. Her whole face lit up when she smiled, and I thought I could look at that face for the rest of my life. I didn't know her, but I felt connected to her in ways I couldn't begin to understand. Could it be the bare foot in your lap? Then we were done with our beers, and it was time to go. She said she was busy and had a business dinner. Didn't want to leave without her number. She gave it to me. Outside, I flagged a cab for her, and she gave me a quick peck on the cheek and got in. I gave the driver $20 and watched the cab until it rounded the corner. It's probably the last $20 he had, too. I wanted her. I had a feeling she wanted me, too. I called her the minute I got back to my apartment, even though I knew that she wouldn't be there. Her machine was on, so I left a short message. I was going to wait 5 days to call you, too, I said, but I decided against it. You free tomorrow night? She came over the next night. It was a Thursday, and Sarah was out on Long Island visiting her parents and doubtless complaining about me. That's what she's doing. She's just wandering the town. Manhattan, Long Island, anyone who will listen. Sarah wants to talk about you. Okay, Michael. We held the whole place to ourselves, but we didn't need the whole place. All we needed was the red futon. We walked through the door, straight into my room, began kissing and taking off each other's clothes. It was perfect. We were perfect. It went beyond chemistry, beyond the way our bodies fit together, and beyond the way we responded to each other's touch. It was as if we were built for making love to each other. We were tender with each other, very patient. We didn't want to rush this. It was too good. We wanted to savor every moment. We didn't want to rush this, even though this is literally the second time I've ever had longer than 2 words with this girl. Carolyn, I whispered, checking to see if she was still awake. She was wrapped around me, holding on for dear life. Probably she's awake then. What? She whispered back. I think I kind of like you, I said. I think I kind of like you too, she said. We drifted off to sleep. sorry, if you guys were expecting me to be able to read this with a straight face, we're expecting too much. In the morning, she clung to me until it was time to go. Then she leapt out of bed, hopped in the shower, got dressed in all about 7 minutes flat. A simple dress, simple shoes, the tiniest hint of makeup. Everything about her was pared down. She wasn't about noise or flash. She was about beautifully understated elegance. You are one gorgeous woman, I said. I couldn't stop staring at her. Thank you, she said, smiling, and then she was gone. She had very full days at Calvin Klein. She worked for the company in Boston in sales, and Calvin himself had asked for her to move to New York and help run the publicity department. Before that, she'd gone to Boston University and graduated with a degree in education, but she decided not to pursue education. She went to work for the marketing department of a Boston nightclub. See that? I'd been plying her with questions. I was going to get the Carolyn Bessette story out of her one way or another. Despite her busy schedule, she came back that night, late after another business dinner. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, she was on my red futon 4 nights running. I was in heaven. On Monday, we woke up clinging to each other. I told her we had to make other plans that night because my hostile roommate was due back. We'll think of something, she said, and off she went. She doesn't have a house? She doesn't have anywhere she lives? I lay back down on the bed. I could smell her on the sheets. I inhaled her. She was partial to Egyptian musk, an inexpensive perfume that smelled like fresh spices, and I could almost taste it on the pillows. Then I, too, got up, showered, slipped into my uniform, and went off to my intellectually challenging job at the Paramount Hotel. She came to see me on my lunch break that very day. I felt awkward opening the door for her, not knowing how I was supposed to greet her. A hug? A kiss? But Carolyn kept her distance. Unlike our first date, on this occasion she was very reserved in public, which I would learn was more her style. I just came by to say hello, she said, and before she could say more, I had to run off to tend to an arriving guest. Later, when I got a short break, we ran round the corner for a quick bite. Before we made it to the hot dog stand, she grabbed my hand and pulled me into an alley where no one could see us and kissed me hard. Meow. Meow, she said. I can't get enough of you either, I said. We hooked up for a movie that night. It was a pretty good movie. But we left after 20 minutes and went back to her place and made love. She may have been reserved in public, but in private, she was intensely passionate. 2 days later, she called and asked me to meet her at her place on her lunch break. I went over and she opened the door and we immediately went to bed. Afterward, she began to cry. Oh, Michael, have we made a mistake? What's wrong? I asked. Nothing, she said. I'm very happy. Too happy. Me too, I said, drying her tears. I loved the freckles on her nose. I loved the way they glowed whenever she blushed. Friday, I was back at her place. It was a nice building, a dormant building, but the apartment was unbelievably small, even by New York standards. As you entered, there was a microscopic kitchen to the right, a bathroom to the left, and the rest of the place, maybe 10 or 12 square feet, was home. There was a box spring and a mattress pressed up against one wall, and a closet just beyond that, and didn't even begin to hold her clothes. There were clothes everywhere, skirts, shoes, shirts, dresses, sweaters, mountains of clothes. There were picture frames on the walls, but none of them had any pictures in them, just gorgeous, ornate, empty frames. A little like the owner. There was something a little eerie about them, ghostly even, and they added to the mystery. What was it about Carolyn that made her so cautious about revealing herself? Why did she never volunteer anything? Why did I have to fight for every tiny shred of information? I just don't like talking about myself, she told me once when I pressed. I'm not that interesting. I'm just an ordinary girl. Sure, on paper, but we're all pretty ordinary on paper. The story on Carolyn goes something like this. She was born in 1966 in White Plains, New York. She had twin sisters, Lauren and Lisa, who were a little older than she. Her parents, Anne and William, divorced in 1974 when Carolyn was 8, and her mother took the 3 girls and moved to Greenwich, Connecticut, where she worked for the public school system. She later married Richard Freeman, an orthopedic surgeon, and the family eventually settled in New Canaan. Carolyn graduated from St. Mary's High School in 1984, where she was dubbed the ultimate beautiful person. After college and a brief stint with that nightclub, she found her way to Calvin Klein in New York, where she worked briefly as a personal shopper to celebrity clients before Calvin himself tapped her for a job in the publicity department. When I pressed her to explain how that had come about, she told me that Calvin had simply liked her sense of style. So did I. I didn't know a damn thing about style, but I knew she had it, and so did everyone else, it seemed. Whenever we were out together, people would notice her in a pair of jeans and sneakers, and they'd notice her in Manolo Blahniks. Men wanted her, women wanted to be her, and I had her. Me, a kid from the sticks in Connecticut, 23 years old. What did this classy, sophisticated 26-year-old see in me? 5 feet and 10 inches of pared-down elegance, so beautiful, so worldly, so refined, and she wanted me. Michael, don't you know everyone wanted you? Like, let's recall what Michael looks like. You know what I mean? Like, what is he so surprised about? And they don't do any talking, so it's not like he had to be a genius. This has got to go, she said. It was barely 10 days into the relationship, and she was already over at my place, going through my things. The object in question was a brightly colored short-sleeved shirt. If you ever wear this again, she said, I'll stop talking to you. She was joking, of course, but not entirely. She took me shopping and had me run my hands over 2 almost identical t-shirts to show me which of them was superior. She taught me all about clothes, fabric, style, pattern, comfort, everything. She bought me night creams. All the boys use them, no matter what they say. She made suggestions about my hair and told me what shampoos to use. She even helped me with my diction, but she did it with such gentleness and such generosity of spirit that I was never embarrassed. Try not to drop your word endings, she said. It makes your sentences sound unfinished. She was right. Doing, saying, going. I sounded like a small-town boy, and Carolyn was trying to help me change that. She was educating me, shaping me, refining me. And I not only allowed it, I appreciated it. Why are you so good to me? I said after a day of shopping and etiquette lessons. Could it be because you look like this? I mean, come on. I'm not good to you, she said. I just want the best for you. You deserve it. Maybe. But she also wanted me, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. And this wasn't just false modesty, I meant it. What could she possibly see in me? I was a kid, uncultured in the extreme. I didn't even know the first thing about art or music or literature or film, and I only just vaguely had heard of Andy Warhol. Hell, I didn't even know how to speak properly. What can I say? She joked. Love is blind. And private. We seldom went out on actual dates together. She said she wasn't interested in making the scene and that she wanted me all to herself, so we spent a lot of time in bed together. In fact, in the first 3 weeks of our relationship, which, by the way, Carolyn never defined as a relationship, we were in bed together every single night. I wasn't complaining, but pretty soon her friends began to call. We don't see you anymore. Where are you hiding? Where do you go at night? Where have you been? So we went to Joe's Cafe one Saturday. Separately, I got there at 8. She arrived an hour later. It was very friendly, very surface. Keith and Jason and the others were all there, and Carolyn paid no more attention to me than she paid to them. It struck me that she never kissed me in public, that she never held my hand in public, that she never so much as touched me if anyone she knew might be around. I felt as if she didn't want people to know about us, as if she wanted everyone to think we were just friends, but I decided to live with it. Carolyn had already made it clear that she preferred to keep her personal business to herself. And who was I to argue with that? Plus, she more than made up for it when we were alone together. She made me feel more wanted than I'd ever felt in my life. There was only one person she actually introduced me to during this entire period, and that was her girlfriend Jules, who often crashed at her tiny apartment. Must have been a cozy arrangement, Michael, Carolyn, Jules, in that tiny little 12-square-foot room? Okay. One evening, we ran into Jules on the street in front of Carolyn's place. This is Michael, Carolyn said, a friend of mine. I couldn't help notice Carolyn's discomfort. It was almost as if she were telling her, don't read anything into this. There's nothing here. Eventually, she dropped the charade, however, and let Jules in on the true nature of our relationship. But Jules was the only one. Did I find it odd? Yes, a little. But I accepted it, because we were together every night. I loved the way she purred as she drifted off to sleep. Not like that foghorn that he'd slept with several months back, I guess. I loved the way her warm breath felt against my neck. I loved the way she clung to me throughout the night. She never gave me any room in bed. I always found myself teetering on the edge of the mattress, with Carolyn pressed tight against me, and from time to time, I'd have to get up and walk over to the other side. It didn't make any difference. Within minutes, Carolyn, still asleep, would come searching for me and take me over that edge, too. I always woke up tired, but happy. Couldn't believe my luck. Not all that long ago, I'd been the loneliest small-town kid in New York City. Now I was head over heels in love with the most fantastic woman in the world. On weekends, we'd go down to Soho, look at all the tourists, window shop, or we'd saunter over to a flea market and see if there's anything that caught her eye. What, another empty picture frame? Okay. When I was hungry, we'd find a place to eat. Any little place would do. Carolyn had an odd relationship with food. She never thought about it, and she often forgot to eat. But when the food arrived, she'd put it away like a regular truck driver. She'd eat what was in front of her and then turn her attention to my plate. And she always ate with her hands. She had this sort of hunt and peck technique. She'd push things around with her fingers and take what she wanted. But she did it with such grace and style that she was able to pull it off. She literally oozed class. She made it look as if eating with her fingers was something she'd studied in finishing school. I'd really like to see that pulled off elegantly. If she was still hungry after an entire meal of her own and half of mine, and amazingly enough, sometimes she was, she'd order mashed potatoes and gravy. Didn't matter where we were. Could be KFC, could be the trendy Odeon. Mashed potatoes were mashed potatoes, and she loved them. She had a weird relationship with beverages, too. She could guzzle an entire bottle of Evian, a large one, in 20 seconds flat. And then she'd order a Snapple iced tea and work on that, and one more after that. This really was the 90s. Remember when Snapple was the drink? She stored food and liquid for long periods of time. The city was her desert. I called her the camel. She behaved as if she didn't know where her next meal was coming from, and the approach worked for her. She looked absolutely fantastic. She had a perfect womanly body, perfectly proportioned, and she never exercised, not a day in her life. I had to kill myself to stay in shape. Sometimes I'd run all the way back to my apartment from her place to do 400 crunches when I got there. But Carolyn was an enemy of exercise. I don't get it, she said. What's the point? If only we could all be Carolyn. Weekday mornings were different. They were always something of a rush. Carolyn would lie in bed next to me, waiting until the last possible moment to get up. Then she'd leap to her feet like a whirling dervish and shower and dress and fix her hair in her usual 7 minutes flat. If we had time, we'd stop at the little grocery store downstairs for a bagel. She always said the same thing. An everything bagel with all the dough scooped out, smothered in fresh tomatoes. No butter, no cream cheese, nothing but that hollow bagel with those juicy tomatoes. Perhaps we figured out why she doesn't need to exercise. She'd inhale it and ask me to walk her to the subway. Yes, she actually took the subway from time to time, even though she loved taxis so much that she called herself the queen of cabs. And she always walked fast. I had trouble keeping up. Come on, slowpoke, she'd say. I'm going to be late for work. When we got to the subway entrance, she'd flash that smile of hers, wave goodbye, and off she'd go. No kiss, nothing. No public displays of affection. As far as she was concerned, public displays of any kind were unseemly. Unless it was that first date. Then she could trace the veins in his arm and put her naked foot in his lap. I'd watch her make her way down the stairs until she was out of sight, and then I'd go back to the Upper East Side and get ready for my own day at the Paramount Hotel. One weekday morning in late August, as we were rushing along, heading for the subway, cutting it close as usual, someone called out her name. Carolyn! We turned and looked. It was John F. Kennedy Jr., cruising past on his bicycle. Carolyn waved back, and the bike turned right at the light, and John Jr. disappeared from view. Was that who I think it was? I asked. Yes, she said. How do you know him? I asked. Carolyn didn't seem eager to tell me, but I pulled it out of her. She'd been introduced to him at a charity event by Kelly Klein, if I remember correctly, and later met him in a more professional capacity when he came by the CK offices to try on clothes. The rich don't shop like you and me. They really are different. They're whisked off to private rooms where they're plied with champagne and caviar and made to feel loved and magnificent. And Carolyn had been there to make sure that JFK Jr. felt loved and magnificent. It was part of her job at the time. She was dealing with all the aspects of publicity. Newspapers, magazines, the twice-yearly fashion shows, and celebrity clients were very much a part of the publicity machine. So yes, other people brought the clothes for him, but Carolyn was there to make sure they did it well. They had to fawn, of course, but they weren't supposed to overdo it. She wanted to make sure that JFK Jr. had only good things to say about his shopping experience when he got back to his close personal friends, Calvin and Kelly Klein. By the way, that was how they met. There was a story making the rounds, and it made the rounds for years and years, that they had met jogging in Central Park, but it was untrue. They first met briefly at that charity event, then again in that suite-like dressing room. But Carolyn assured me that she'd been under-impressed. Well, from everything we learned about John Jr. when we read Ask Not, I'm not surprised she was underimpressed. He doesn't seem like an overly impressive person in reality. The book goes on to say John Jr. called, and he called, and he called her. He was incredibly persistent, she told me as we continued on our way to the subway. What happened? I asked. Nothing, she said. We went out a couple of times. Dinner? Dinner, she repeated, and once or twice to Martha's Vineyard. You went to Martha's Vineyard with John Kennedy Jr.? I wasn't exactly thrilled by that idea. Not that I suffered from retroactive jealousy, but I was nuts about Carolyn, and I didn't want anything to go wrong. We were at the entrance to the subway now. She put her hand on my arm as if to reassure me. It was nothing, Michael. Nothing, I said, trying to control my voice. You don't go away for a weekend with a guy and say it's nothing. It really was nothing, she said with a note of irritation now. I went as a friend. What does that mean, friend? It occurred to me that she had never once admitted to any kind of serious liaison with any man. Not Jason, not JFK Jr., not the hockey player she had dated in college. It was almost as if she didn't want to acknowledge that she had any sexual history at all. She wanted to be a virgin for me. Every other man in her life had just been a friend. And by the way, let's not forget she continually introduces him as her friend. So friend has a different meaning for Carolyn. Michael, she said, let's drop this. Nothing happened. It was no big deal. You've nothing to worry about. She then turned and hurried down the stairs to the subway. I walked off worrying. I didn't know why I felt so insecure. Despite my small-town kid misgivings, I knew Carolyn was in love with me. It wasn't that she told me so. It was more about the way that she held me, the way she looked at me. Still, I thought it was unreasonable of her to deny that she had a past. It didn't make her less pure. It didn't make her a bad girl. We all have pasts. But a past with JFK Jr.? Well, that was a little troubling. If the roles had been reversed, had it been Madonna gliding past on roller skates waving at me, and I said, "Oh, it was nothing. We went on a cruise one long ago weekend," I wonder how Carolyn would have responded. I called at her work later that morning. "You sure nothing happened?" I said. My insecurity was showing, but I didn't give a damn. "Michael," she said, her voice clear and firm, "nothing happened. And I really don't want to talk about it. People tell each other too much about their pasts. I've nothing to hide. I just don't think talking about the past does anything for anyone." Maybe she was right. Maybe people did share too many details. I'd been in love with a girl I met in high school who I'll refer to as Rachel, and I'd shared that with Carolyn, but only fleetingly, with few details. So I followed her lead and I let it drop. She was the worldly one. She was the sophisticate in the relationship. I really didn't need to share everything. I didn't need to tell her about the other girls I'd been with. What was the point? Similarly, if she didn't want to talk about JFK Jr., she shouldn't feel any pressure to do so. I was curious, sure, and I wanted to know. But at the end of the day, was it really my business? And what was the point? So I decided then and there that I wasn't going to press her. I was going to live in the present. I was going to enjoy the moment. She called me back later that morning and asked if I was free for lunch. Maybe she was trying to reassure me. I don't know. I just know it worried me more. It made me feel even less secure. Why is she trying to reassure me if I have nothing to worry about? The male mind at work. I went off to meet her for lunch, still thinking about John Jr. He was American royalty. A woman like Carolyn deserved a man like him. Hopeless. Who was I kidding? Real love only happens in the movies. Maybe she was meeting me for lunch. To dump me. And then I saw her coming down the street. I saw her before she saw me. And when she looked up and spotted me, she did this crazy double take. Like, who are you? She looked lit from within. She looked that happy to see me. And in that instant, all the doubts I had about our future were magically dispelled. And this time, she actually kissed me smack on the lips, right there in the middle of the sidewalk, in the middle of the city. A genuine public display of affection. And I remember thinking, this is the girl I'm going to marry. I don't doubt it for a second. This woman here is going to be my wife. Michael, can I remind you that not but 2 seconds ago you were concerned that she was trying to be too reassuring and that's why she invited you to lunch? And now she's kissing you in the street, a thing she's never done? She indeed is trying to reassure you. Poor simple Michael. We hurried through lunch. She wolfed down her meal and devoured half of mine and managed to avoid any mention of John Jr. She talked about work, an upcoming fashion show, and about a new designer, and then she had to run. "I'll call you later," she said, adding, "if I have time." "Can't we get dinner together?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I'll let you know." And she was off. My gorgeous Carolyn. Carolyn, who liked talking about the future even less than she liked talking about the past, if that was remotely possible. Even the near term was too complicated for her. She refused to make a plan. It always depended on how things went at work, how much she got done, whether she had to go to that boring thing at the Met. But I didn't mind. I was idiotically happy. As far as I was concerned, it was nothing short of a miracle that I had this amazing woman in my life. I got home walking on air, and a phone call from Click sent me into the clouds. The agency had booked me for a gig Saturday afternoon. They needed a guy with nice abs for a couple hours. Was I available? 10 sharp, be on time. So when Saturday rolled around, I went to the studio and introduced myself to one of the assistants, and she hollered in the direction of the main room, "The abs are here." And I guess that's what I was, a set of abs. And they lit the abs and shot the abs and sent the abs on their way. The photographer didn't look at my face once. I was humiliated. I told Carolyn about it that night, and she said that was the nature of business. "These people are interested in getting to know you," she said. "It's about getting what they need from you. It's about the work. Don't take it personally." In a way, that was very helpful. She took a look at my portfolio, was incredibly encouraging. There wasn't a lot there, she said, but what I had was very good. I see that gorgeous body on the side of a bus, and I really mean that. I wouldn't say that lightly. She's very good that way. She was never afraid to compliment me or give me encouragement. I think it was a function of her own self-confidence. I'd been around women who put me down, made me feel bad, or said things to fuel my insecurity, as if I wasn't sufficiently insecure already. But being with Carolyn made me see that was really about their own fears. People tear people down to keep them close, to make them feel so horrible and unwanted that they'll never leave. That's what emotional abuse is all about. Well, with Carolyn, it was the exact opposite. She tried to build me up, make me feel good about myself and my future. She was working at giving me self-confidence because she knew I didn't have much. Isn't it weird that the people who are like some of the best looking people feel so bad about themselves all the time? I never really thought about this because I'm not in the category, but I guess when people are like stunningly attractive, they probably do get a lot of ridicule because people think it's not fair that you're so attractive. It's not fair that you were blessed with, these genetics. So I'm going to make sure to put you in your place. Don't get too lofty minded. Don't get too big for your britches because, you're not so perfect. And maybe that's why really attractive people are so insecure. Because it doesn't make sense. How could you be this insecure when you have a face and a body of the gods? I mean, like, what's going on here? How could you even feel bad? I've always wondered why that is. But maybe they just get more abuse than the rest of us because the rest of us are just plotting through life. Nobody's trying to take us down. Nobody's intimidated by us. You are stunningly handsome, she told me over and over again. Don't you realize how handsome you are? Frankly, no, I didn't realize it, but Carolyn tried to make me believe it. She always noticed handsome men. She had a thing about beauty, I guess, in both men and women. I had to admit that I wasn't all that experienced, sexually speaking. I was still a kid, and a shy kid at that. I'd gotten off to a late start, and I remained awkward around women. I didn't know how to approach them, didn't know what to say. And if by some miracle I found myself in bed with any of them, I wasn't always sure where to start or what to do. Till I met Carolyn. I'd always been anxious around women. In Carolyn, I found what I was looking for, and I didn't want anyone else. She was very comfortable with her body. She'd come to bed in nothing but a t-shirt and a thong, and slide up next to me like a cat, coquettish, playful, enjoying the drama, pulling away with feigned shyness until I couldn't take it anymore. I began to believe the fairy tales. How we're all out there looking for a magical missing half. Well, Carolyn was my missing half. I knew it deep in my heart. I had misgivings about my job, my career, and my future, but I had no misgivings about Carolyn. Sure, there'd been that business with John Jr., but that was in the distant past. Nothing had happened, right? So maybe it nagged me a little. John F. Kennedy Jr.? So what? I had it under control. Carolyn, I said one muggy night. We were at her place, trying to stay cool. Are we boyfriend and girlfriend or what? I felt like an idiot for saying it, but I guess I needed some reassurance. Carolyn looked at me. Why does it have to be like that? She said gently. Why do people feel like a need to define things? We're together. Isn't that enough? She was right. It was enough. It's not like I had to pin her or anything. This was New York after all. People did things differently in New York. That's always like the worst. That's the worst advice you give yourself. You ask somebody a question, just a common sense question. Hey, we're sleeping together and stuff, but what is this? And then they're like, they don't have to define it. And then you tell yourself, oh, I'm just not sophisticated enough to know that this doesn't have to have a label. Like, sophisticated people don't label things. Sophisticated people just have nuance all over the place. I'm the country bumpkin who wants some definition here. I better leave my bumpkin ways behind and, just kind of go with the flow. Hey, country bumpkin, bumpkinism isn't so bad. Sometimes it's okay to want a label on something. And it doesn't mean that just because you're now in New York City, you have to live with some kind of nebulous, I don't know, maybe kind of sort of, oh, we're breaking up now? Well, yeah, we were never together. That's how that ends. If they never have to define for you, then they can just slip out and be like, oh, were you confused? That's kind of you though, right? We weren't in a relationship. I hate that. The next night, after we made love, she cried. Oh, she's crying again after they make love? I feel like he needs to be concerned about this. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing, she said, still crying. Why are you doing this to me? What am I doing to you? This is too good, she said. I'm too happy. I don't want this to end. Why should it end? I said, wiping the tears from her face. It doesn't have to end. Everything ends, she said. And then she turned her back to me and drifted off to sleep. In the morning, I asked her if she was all right. She acted as if the previous night had never happened. I found it a little scary. She was already late, so she skipped the bagel, flagged down a cab, and I jogged the many miles home, worrying the whole way. Carolyn ran things in the relationship. You might say she had control issues. She called me when she wanted to call me and saw me when she wanted to see me. But so what? She called all the time, and we saw each other all the time. In fact, in the course of those first 3 weeks, we'd spent all but one night together. She was also very clingy. It went beyond the way she held on to me at night, stuck to my side like a magnet. I began to notice a hint of panic in her eyes whenever we parted ways. Once she called me and couldn't reach me, and she worked herself into a frenzy. "Where have you been?" she said the next day, having finally tracked me down. "Nowhere," I replied. "I was out jogging." "You should let me know where you are in case I need you." "Okay," I said. "I will. I'll try." "That's not good enough." So she had abandonment issues. A lot of people do, and hers were well-founded. Her father left home when she was 8 years old. Like half the population, she was raised by a single parent. And the rest of us, those who were raised in happy homes, don't have issues too? I certainly did, and I was struggling with them at that very moment. What had Carolyn been crying about the night before? What was I doing to her that she didn't want to discuss? And if she didn't want to discuss it, what steps could I take to fix it? I began to overanalyze things. I looked back over the past few days and convinced myself that, despite the clinginess, she seemed to have become somehow more removed, more distant. Half the day would go by, and she wouldn't have called. I usually tried not to bother her at work, but that day was different. I was feeling anxious, and I called her several times. Various assistants took messages for me, and I left word repeatedly on her answering machine at home. But I didn't hear back from her until the following morning, a Friday. "Sorry I didn't get back to you," she said. "I had a crazy day. Let's talk later. I'll call." She didn't call. I tried repeatedly but couldn't get through. I left more messages on her machine, trying to keep the petulance out of my voice. Nothing. I called again before I went to sleep that night, and she didn't answer. It was after 1 a.m. I slept fitfully. Who had abandonment issues now? Around lunchtime, Carolyn showed up at the hotel. I was very glad she was there, but it was a Saturday and I was pretty busy. Plus, there was the humiliation to deal with. Here's your sort of boyfriend Michael opening and closing doors and smiling his most professional smile. Ain't he cool? Carolyn seemed to be getting impatient. I had to keep running off to greet guests and hustle bags and do my job, and I couldn't take any chances. I needed the job. It was the only thing keeping me off the streets. The next time I broke away, stealing another moment with her, a very strange thing happened. Carolyn seemed downright angry. She was normally so patient and loving, and here she was standing in the Paramount lobby looking seriously pissed. I didn't get it. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm just really busy." "Is that it?" she said with a snarl in her voice. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I don't think you're very happy to see me," she said. "You looked unhappy from the moment I showed up." "Carolyn," I said, "that's not true, and you know it's not true. I couldn't be happier to see you. I wish I could run away with you right now, but I can't. I need this job." "Great," she said, angrier than ever. And abruptly, she walked past me and marched right out of the hotel. I was stunned. I'd never seen that side of her. I didn't understand it. Well, you have only known her 3 weeks. There's many a facet to this Carolyn, I feel. I phoned her the moment I got home. Her friend Jules answered the phone. "Carolyn's not here," she said. I called back an hour later. Nothing. Called at midnight and left another message. Still nothing. I called the following afternoon and Jules picked up and said she hadn't seen Carolyn since morning. And yes, she'd given her my messages. All of them. Boy, I thought that was cold. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make a pest of myself, and I didn't want to make trouble for Carolyn, so I decided to stop calling. I told myself she'd call me as soon as she got through whatever it was she was going through. After all, it was pretty clear that I wanted to talk to her. I'd left at least a dozen messages. 5 days went by, and still Carolyn didn't call. I phoned home. My mother said something was wrong, and I told her that I'd had a little tiff with Carolyn. She hadn't met Carolyn, but she'd heard about her from me. And I didn't know what more to say. Was I supposed to tell her that Carolyn had dumped me with no explanation whatsoever? That we had just spent an entire month together, both of us walking on air, unable to get enough of each other, and that she'd suddenly changed her mind about me? I thought back to that last time I'd seen her, a few days earlier at the Paramount, and about how uncharacteristically harsh she'd been. I didn't understand what that had been about either. It felt as if she'd come to see me to pick a fight. Why? I was very confused. I didn't hear from her the next day, or the day after that, and I finally got the hint. The following weekend, I went home to lick my wounds. Well, that's the end of the first chapter of young Michael Bergen's book. My goodness. Okay. This'll be fun. Thank you guys for hanging out with me for the last hour. This was rather amusing, and I'm enjoying it. I don't know what I expected, but yeah, I guess if I'd stopped to consider, this is probably what I should have expected the book to be. I mean, it's very detailed. I'm enjoying all the tidbits, but it is a little bit funny to me. Actually, a lot funny. I'm hoping you're enjoying it too. All right, well, I'll see you tomorrow for our next installment of The Other Man. The next chapter is entitled Home, so let's see what happens when he goes home to lick his wounds. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.